In what's fast becoming an end-of-year tradition on my channel here today, I wanted to walk you through the 4 key areas of my aviation world, having a look at some of the highlights from the past year, but also talking about what I think might be coming to the world of aviation in 2026. But I can't talk about aviation this past year without really quickly touching on my personal situation. And yes, as I record this, what are we, December the 12th right now, I'm still medically grounded. I still cannot fly as pilot in command. It's really humbled me in my situation over these last 2 years of not flying to realise that yes, it sucks for me personally. I wish I could be out there flying, especially on a day like today. But knowing that there are so many others of you out there at the moment who are going through struggles way worse than mine, I just want to say I really hope that 2026 brings some positivity for you. I hope that those of you that reached out can get back to flying again in 2026. But even though I haven't been able to fly myself as pilot in command here in Echo Yankee Zulu, I have nonetheless had some really positive and enjoyable aviation experiences in 2025. So let's go through some of those. So I've been really lucky to have flown some really cool aircraft this year. I was on the Boeing 747 2 times. And there it is. It's just a phenomenal looking aircraft. I tried China's brand new Comac C919. Well, there it is. That's the C919. Hello. And in the world of general aviation, I got to fly the new Diamond DA50.
Here it is.
But if I had to pick 3 highlights from the year, the first one I would probably say was the day I got to experience flying with the firefighting team from Kestrel Aviation in their fleet of Bell helicopters. Can you let me know when he's about to drop, just so I can make sure I get him this time?
Yep. So he's coming in for his drop now, he's lining it up.
Amazing. That was spot on, thank you. Perfect. Especially this time of year here in Australia where the temperature's getting hotter. We've already got bushfires. We had some really bad ones in New South Wales. There's a couple burning in Western Australia in the suburbs of Perth at the moment. It was just a really humbling experience to see how these people put themselves out there to protect lives and protect the property of people during these really difficult times here in Australia. My second favourite highlight would then have to be visiting Checkerboard Hill in Hong Kong. One of the most difficult approaches that any pilot could ever have flown in the history of aviation. For someone who's only ever seen videos of that, like on the ground, to actually see it in person myself, that was a real highlight. I enjoyed going to see that. And then of course flying in Echo Yankee Zulu again, now of course not as pilot in command, but with my friend and flight instructor Shannon, who's been able to sit next to me.
Nice. All right, you guys ready? I'm not going to do anything aggressive.
You're not
I'm not going to do Stephen. I'll count it down. So 3, 2, 1, break.
Got my entrance spot landing as well.
Nice.
All good.
Flying alongside my good friend Stephen in Kilo Juliet November doing formation flying was a real highlight of the year for me as well, and a reminder of what I've been, not that I need a reminder because I know what I've been missing out on, but you know, good motivation for me to keep fighting for what I want, because it just reminds me how much I enjoy doing it. So then there were some aviation highlights a year that weren't around my specific flying, but the aviation world in general, the first of which was Qantas launching their new A321s here in Australia. This is the brand new Qantas A321 XLR, one of only 2 currently flying here in Australia. Which for us Australian travellers is a really big deal because we've had the era of the Boeing 737s with Qantas for a long time now. So to get some new aircraft and to get new Airbus aircraft, which again signifies another huge step forward for Qantas in terms of getting closer to Project Sunrise in those A350 ultra long range aircraft, which hopefully in 2026 will be flying between Sydney and London direct and Sydney and New York direct. Knowing that we're taking another step closer to that was a huge deal for the aviation world, not just here, but I think globally. Another highlight from the year, and again here in Australia, was that we had the first aircraft touching down at Western Sydney International Airport. They're actually landing on the opposite end of the runway all the way down the other side. I think he's coming in now. But we've also had a jet touching down on that runway too, and with Western Sydney International opening up in 2026. It's another good news story in the world of Australian aviation, and I'm really pleased to see this ongoing investment in air travel here in this country. And in the world of general aviation, it would be remiss not to talk about Byron Waller. He's a 16-year-old pilot here in Australia who's been through his own medical adversity in the past, but always had this dream, first of all, about flying around Australia, and he ticked that off his list pretty quick, but then he also wanted to fly an aircraft around the world. And this year in 2025, Byron achieved exactly that. So at 16, he took a Sling TSI and he set the record for being the youngest assisted pilot, so he took instructors with him to fly around the world. It was a brilliant achievement. Congratulations. It really sets such good groundwork, not just for pilots who have their own medical issues that they're going through who want to be able to fly, but just pilots in general, to be able to understand what they can achieve if they have a goal and they set their mind to it. So Byron, thanks for doing what you do for the aviation industry, and well done. Okay, I want to talk about my top YouTube aviation channels for the year then. What have I been watching in no particular order? Let's start off first of all with Mika Lang. Look, I've mentioned him on this channel before several times, but he's been producing a few more videos this year about some of his ferry flights, his delivery flights. He does great, really well made content, really good for the procedural side of flying as well, if you want to follow along what he's doing. He's a very accomplished instrument pilot as well, so I really like watching his videos so I can try and stay current with some of the radio calls and procedures for IFR flying. I've been watching a lot of John Page Aviation as well, and he's a British based pilot, but he does a lot of ferry flying as well. Many different aircraft types, but he does specialize in Cirrus, so he's flown the SF-50 Vision jet, he flies the new SR-22 G7s. Again, lots of great procedural work, and he really talks through his workflow and some of the logistics of international flying as well. Really enjoy his videos, and it's nice to see John posting again after a little bit of a break from YouTube. I've also been watching Tim. He runs a channel called Jodel Flyer. He flies I think it's a Jodel DR1050 out of a small airfield in England. I really enjoy his videos because they're not overproduced. You get good radio calls in there, and I like seeing some of the procedures in UK airspace as well. He also goes to some pretty interesting destinations as well. And Tim, I've met him once before at an air show. He's also just a very nice guy too. So if you haven't checked out his channel, go and have a look. Someone's starting up next to me, so I'll just shut that for a second. And finally, I've been watching, as I have done a lot in the past as well, I've mentioned him before, but Thomas, who's a pilot that flies a Cessna Cardinal, he's got a channel called Buzzing Around because it's Lima Yankee Bravo Uniform Zulu, the registration of his aircraft. He did a really interesting set of videos about him crossing the North Atlantic previously, but this year he released his Norway flying adventure, and I've been really enjoying watching those videos too. All those channels are linked down below as well, and let me know in the comments other channels that you've been watching, especially smaller aviation channels, maybe some of the people out there who are producing really good content but not getting the views and the recognition that they should be. Let me know, I always love a good recommendation. Okay, I'm going to go inside because it is way too hot in EYZ to do this final part. I want to talk about my aviation predictions, what I think is going to happen in the commercial and general aviation world in 2026, but there's no airflow in this aircraft. So let's go inside and talk about what the future holds. Much cooler in here, much better. So a couple of predictions for 2026. I'll go through these quite fast. First of all, I think commercial air travel is going to feel busier in the future because it's going to be busier in the future. Now, of course, the amount of people traveling year on year after COVID continues to go up. But the key thing here is that deliveries of new aircraft is not meeting that demand. So what's called load factor is going to go up. So those days of having a seat next to you, which might be free for the flight, I think is going to become less and less common as we move into the future. My second thought about 2026 is I think aviation, in terms of general aviation, and in particular YouTube, unfortunately is going to continue to go down a bit of a path which I'm not particularly happy with, and I know others have spoken out about this as well in the past, which is creators turning to the more sensationalist style of aviation content, the amateur air crash investigation stuff. I understand can be appealing from a creator's point of view. You make a video about you flying in a plane from A to B, gets a small amount of views. You make a video about why you think this Boeing Dreamliner crashed in India, it gets a lot of views, and it can be appealing to just shoot for that. I get it. I'm not judging anybody who decides to do that. But what I hope in 2026 is we don't see more of the original creators trying to go for that more sensationalist content. But what I hope more is that us, the audience, we continue to vote with our views. We continue to not watch those sorts of videos. So this bubble of producing sensationalist amateur air crash investigation content eventually bursts, and we just go back to the good old days of good aviation creators making good aviation content. In terms of new aircraft, I think Cirrus are going to come out with a G8. When I say think, I should probably say hope. We're finally going to get our FADEC controlled Jet A1 burning G3000 Prime touchscreen enabled Cirrus G8. If they do that, it will become the best general aviation aircraft ever been made, and I think a lot of the other manufacturers will feel really worried about their futures. I think next year we're going to hear a lot more about SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be positive. I think the rollout of SAF hasn't come around as quickly as a lot of the regulators would have predicted and a lot of the manufacturers would have liked. And so in 2026, I think we will potentially see some shifting of some of the targets that were originally set by the regulators for the rollout of SAF ongoing for the aviation industry. And then two other things, not so much predictions, these are kind of guarantees here in Australia. One is that Western Sydney International Airport is going to finally open. Be interesting to see what happens with air travel around Sydney, especially what happens with some of the training and the airspace changes that will happen for Camden and Bankstown airports around Sydney as well next year. And we're also going to get a brand new airline. Remember that video I made about Koala Airways? Well, CEO Bill Aisling said that in 2026 they're going to actually launch, and they've been holding back this last year or two since the initial announcement because, as he said, we're not trying to be Qantas or Virgin. Our model is fundamentally different, and that's why we've attracted the backing we have. So I guess they're trying not to show their hands too much until they launch in 2026, because the likes of Qantas and Virgin, as soon as a new airline launches, well, they're going to do everything that they have in their power to maybe try and make sure that that's not a success. But I, for one, am looking forward to a new airline launching in Australia. Good luck, Koala. Look forward to see what you've got. So here's to seeing the aviation industry continuing to grow and doing great things in 2026. Here's to a great year for you in your world of aviation and travel. And yeah, here's hoping that 2026 sees me back flying in the pilot seat again. Thank you so much for all your support over this last year, all your messages, all your encouragement, all your motivation. It's meant so much to me. But I'll be back in 2026, hopefully with some very enjoyable and fun flying adventures, maybe in the left seat. We'll see. Have a great break.